Welcome to Change Bites with Rafaa Mustafa. Each episode features practical tips and actionable approaches to change management, grounded in real cases and delivered in small bites. A key takeaway snapshot is shared on the host's LinkedIn profile, so there's no need to take notes while listening. Let's begin today's episode.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Change Bites. This is part 2 of my conversation with Gilbert Kruidenier on change management with real impact. In part 1, we talked about the skills and habits that strengthen change capability. Today, we will move into practical examples, focusing on how data can be used to guide decisions and improve outcomes during change. So let's dive into it. Gilbert, when you think about data that truly matters in change management, which metrics make the biggest difference?
I think it's the metrics that quantify user groups and show the issue that you're trying to solve, but it's always contextual. So let's say you're working on a project that implements timesheets to track worker well-being aimed at reducing overtime. You'd want to know the total hours worked, of course, but also what time is spent on. So what activities, if people are taking breaks, time with the business, type of role, who is their leader. All this is to paint a picture of what might be driving their work behaviors. There's no one metric to rule them all, but the data often tells you a story.
Fantastic. And is there any type of data that change managers should avoid collecting because it doesn't actually help?
I tend to not waste my time on vanity metrics that just don't actually tell you anything, just make the project look good because you've massaged the numbers or the red, green and ambers that you can score your project on, and it doesn't tell you anything. I call them watermelon metrics, so green on the outside, red on the inside. And everyone thinks that everything is great, and then the project gets to delivery point or near completion, and it turns out that everything is actually really bad. So I try to avoid those sort of metrics.
That's really helpful. I think, as you said, Gilbert, the key message here is it's really about the story behind data, not the numbers themselves, but how the numbers are explained and framed, because that shapes what leaders decide to do. Let's go deeper on this. When you are reporting to a steerco, what's the best way to present change insights so leaders can act on them?
Short and sharp. That's really simple. I see it so often. I just saw a pack this morning, people presenting to the steerco. Were 15 slides. I think there were, no kidding, about 100 to 150 words on each slide. That's 2,500. That's a LinkedIn article. No one's going to read that. So I like to do it completely different. I use visualization, graphs, images, stats. Keep it really simple. One slide, one message. Don't try to sell a 500-word story with one slide. You're just not going to engage.
Love that. One slide, one message with simple visuals makes it much easier for leaders to act. Now, circling back to turning data into a story, what tips would you share with our listeners?
Yeah, I think if you want to tell a story, keep it really close to something that they can recognize. So I'll use that timesheet project as an example. No one was really impressed or concerned about 3,000 hours of overtime every week across 1,000 employees. It's only like 3 hours per person, right? Until you explain with some visuals and an image that that's a risk. Divide that number by 40 hours per week. So 3,000 divided by 40 gives you about 75 ghost employees doing work they're not paid for and can't be forced to do. So what if they stopped? Your productivity would plummet and you'd not be able to hit your production targets. That worked really well, and we'd be talking about the 75 ghosts from there on, and everyone knew exactly what that was, a ghost employee, and started reducing those hours and putting backfill in so people didn't have to work that overtime because it's just a business risk that you don't need.
Great points, and I'm confident people will find this really valuable. On presenting data, many of us use dashboards. What's your approach to creating a small but powerful change dashboard on the fly?
I tend to stick to 5 to 7 metrics. 5 if I can get away with it, 7 if they're a little bit more data hungry, because some organizations are, and really focus on the things that I can validate and be sure that it's an actual metric. Because sometimes you see dashboards, you go like, where does the data come from? How is this validated? Where can I find the source? Can I check it? Like, oh, we think it's about 80%. Yeah, that's not good enough, especially not when you're making decisions that could impact the future of the organization. You want to make sure that you get it right. So I tend to stick to operational metrics, things that we can see in reality where I can go and check and make it as human as possible. Let the data tell the story of this is what's happening to people. We always like to quote the employee satisfaction survey. My personal pet peeve there is that people consider NPS, Net Promoter Score, an actual metric. We were just talking about vanity metrics. That to me is a vanity metric. It's like, it's bad when it's above 80, it's good when it's above 80, it's bad when it's below 80. That is too arbitrary to me. That's not the reality. So you have to make a dashboard that is easy to read, 5 to 7 metrics, make sure that it's operational, and make sure that it connects with what the executive wants to see, because you might want to talk about the number of widgets delivered in a certain week, but they might only be interested in the cost overrun of the project at the moment or how much it's saving. So it needs to reflect the need of the audience more than anything else.
That makes a lot of sense and gives change managers a practical way to do that. Let's now shift to data privacy. What data privacy consideration should change leaders keep in mind?
I feel like the need for data or the need for understanding sometimes overrules the reality of what you're supposed to show, yes or no. And the unfortunate reality of humans is that we draw connections where sometimes there aren't any, and that we draw conclusions where we go in the wrong direction or make assumptions. And a little bit of data can be a very dangerous thing, because especially when people are in a hurry and they just look at it and they look at the data and go like, okay, so 75% of our items get stolen by male employees. So all male employees are potential thieves. So we're going to install security cameras over there. I think you've missed a couple of points there when you start thinking about data in that way. And when it comes to reporting back on, for example, personal circumstances of people, you have to be very careful there. There are laws that protect privacy, and it can be quite legally damaging and reputationally damaging for organizations. For just a little bit more information, you have to be very careful what you actually want to present and what you want to know. Most changes don't rely on that. And of course, the obvious one that I always like to mention is when you're running surveys, and even though every change manager who's worth their salt, they will know that you de-identify data, even though some people make statements that are very, very easily recognizable, their language or the words that they always use. You have to be mindful that you have to de-identify that and be sure that people can't be recognized. Because even though people say like, I don't mind that people see that that's me or whatever, it generally doesn't end well. So you want to make sure that your data is de-identified.
Great points. In addition to surveys, let me share another example. A stakeholder assessment document is confidential because it reveals their stance and commitment to change. So it is good practice to password protect it.
Absolutely.
Before we move on, there is another dimension we can't ignore. We've talked about the growing importance of data in guiding decisions, change decisions, and AI is quickly becoming part of that picture. How do you see AI influencing data use in change management?
I have a lot of thoughts on AI, especially lately. There's so many people who have opinions on it that I find myself stepping away from the conversation a little bit. There's already so much noise and I don't feel like I have the latest cutting edge thoughts on this, but I do see it work in practice. I've been working with it for about 6-7 years now. So I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve for once. And what I've seen is AI doesn't improve the quality of data. And that's a real problem. It will create a sense of false confidence, unfortunately. I use AI every day, and I even sit next to an AI team, and their main concern is data quality and availability, followed closely by the organization understanding and supporting the need for clean data. That's often not even a reality in most organizations. They're like, oh, we've got heaps of data, but it's super dirty. It's not connected. It's not even remotely transferable or integratable. So at the end of the day, AI outcomes will be as good as what goes in at the start. And that's still pretty basic and dirty. So don't expect a good outcome from that. Now, on a more positive note, my hope is that AI will eventually improve analysis of sentiment and presentation of risks and benefits. And that makes it better for business cases, tailored content for the people in our care as well. So far, I'm not too impressed with what I've seen, but it will be much better very quickly. And as we all learn to move away from the shiny polish and get into the deep work again, it will make us all better at our jobs. So I'm not one of those people who says AI will take all our jobs. I don't think so, but it will make us do our jobs in different ways. And I welcome that because I think we can do a lot better. And if we have more data to help us, can make even better solutions for people.
Absolutely. AI is already reshaping the way we approach our work. One final question before we wrap up. If a listener wants to grow their confidence in using data to lead change, what is the first practical habit you recommend they start building?
Data analysis. It's very simple. Start practicing data analysis and visualization to tell a story with your data. That's a skill that everyone should have nowadays. So don't hide from Excel and basic statistics. I never used to be very good at statistics, but I've started, because I've practiced a lot, started to develop a little bit of fluency in understanding what the data is telling me. And especially when you read a lot like I do, and when you see a lot of research come in, you start to ask a lot of questions about how valid is this? How reproducible is it? And you don't have to be a genius or a mathematician to figure out how you can use data in better ways, especially nowadays with AI. But you always have to check the outcomes because there's still hallucination going on. There's still thought errors, bias in the data. So all that work, data analysis, visualization, will help you to speak the language of the executive, which is risk and dollars first, and employee experience second. So if you can use that data to tell the story, you'd serve the people in your care a lot better.
Great takeaways. Gilbert, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Sure.
And thanks everyone for listening to Change Bites. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Change Bites. A key takeaway snapshot from this episode is available on the host's LinkedIn profile. Links to all resources mentioned are included in the podcast notes. Podcast updates are also shared via the Agile-Brainz LinkedIn page. Follow Change Bites to stay up to date with future episodes.